All right, welcome back. Mr. Odidiri is still joining us from Lagos. Mr. Odidiri, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yes. You were just speaking earlier on about perhaps is there a way out for Nigeria concerning those debts, quagmire that we're in?
Yes, what I was saying was that you've got three options, yeah? Whenever you're facing a revenue crunch, you either raise your revenues, you either cut your spending, or you borrow. So Nigeria's revenues, we haven't seen an increase with regards to oil revenues and non-oil as well. We've got our tax issues we're facing because of the number of people in the informal economy that we're not able to tax. Spending has not been cut. You look at what we're spending on fuel subsidies, there's been an ongoing debate on that. So the only other option is to borrow. And what I was saying earlier was that the president's request to the legislature for the extra 29 billion shoots up our debt profile ×2. As of June of this year, we're at 25 trillion. I was saying, I heard you went over that in your earlier segment. And that's about $30 billion. And so he's almost borrowing our entire debt profile, which he says he wants to use for critical products. And it's going to take that up to double our debt profile. And so the key thing for your viewers is our debt service to revenue ratio. A lot of people like to talk about debt to GDP, but that's not really what to look at. How much you are spending on servicing your debt. We're almost at 60%, I think even pushing 70%, which means that for every 100 naira that Nigeria brings in revenue, 60 naira of that is going towards servicing debt, which leaves only 40 naira for recurring capital expenditure and so on. So it's a tough place that we're in.
The question will be, from your three options, either we raise revenue, we cut spending, or we borrow. Do you think that we've sufficiently done both, not borrowing? Have we sufficiently raised our revenue, perhaps with 7.5% taxes now for VAT? Then have we sufficiently cut spending, waste, before we borrow?
The answer is no. Wait, sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. All right, so yeah, have we raised revenue? Remember VADES, the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme. That didn't raise as much as we liked. If not that, I believe they would have continued it. Oil prices have not been favorable to us. We entered a recession because oil prices plummeted in 2015. So as far as raising revenue, Nigeria is still working towards that. I mean, I know they're trying to, they've passed the law to increase VAT from 5% to 7.5. But if you look at VAT in other countries, South Africa, your Ghana, your other Angola, their VAT is in double digits. Tax to GDP is only single digit, 6% for Nigeria. So no, we haven't been raising as much revenue as we'd like. But to drill on that, Nancy, it's easy for me to say we are not raising enough revenue. Who are you raising the revenue from? You're taxing the very same Nigerians whose disposable incomes are not that high. Wages have not risen that much. Look at the struggle to get the minimum wage raised from 18,000 to 30,000. In dollar terms, that amount hasn't even moved that much. So while it's easy for me to say Nigeria hasn't raised revenue, I'm also very conversant. We should all be conversant of the fact that the Nigerians that you're trying to raise higher tax revenue from are also burdened as well. So I think the key there is to look at the informal economy. It's a lot of work, but you have to go into the informal economy and try and tax individuals because not everybody is paying. So that's on the revenue side. On the spending side, again, I'm conversant of what this would mean for people. The subsidies, the fuel subsidies, they have to be reduced. Maybe not all at once, but gradually. And fuel right now, PMS is 145 naira per liter. In Ghana, they're paying almost 300. South Africa, they're paying more. Angola, Cameroon, they're all paying higher. But what would that mean for me, you and I, and everybody that's watching? We're paying 145 naira per liter. If they remove the fuel subsidy, the cap on PMS, we'd be paying maybe 300 or 350. So again, that's going to fall on us. But these are the type of bitter pills you have to swallow when you haven't moved as quickly as you should have in either raising revenue or cutting spending.
Now let's move to another issue. Okay, still talking about this debt issue, because the government has said that concerning this about $29.9 billion loan, fresh loan it wants to get, it wants to finance 39 critical infrastructure projects. One would actually say, like I said earlier on at the intro, it's not bad to borrow. Is it bad to borrow? Let me know where you stand.
Yeah. I mean, where I stand is we have no choice. We have to borrow. So
Okay.
if the revenue increase is not moving as fast as possible, there's just doesn't seem that there's the political will to cut spending. I've only mentioned subsidies. There's also personnel costs, the size of the civil servants, multiple agencies, some of them duplicating the work that they do. There's no political will to cut spending because of, I guess, political implications. So, if you want to get the straight answer where I stand, we don't. Where is the money going to come from? We have to borrow. At this point, there's no other choice.
Now, can we be a lot more innovative if we say we don't borrow? Because, for example, in business, it's not bad to borrow, but what are you borrowing for? That should be the next question. Do you understand what I mean in terms of if you want to borrow for critical infrastructure project, or don't borrow for consumption, let me put it that way. But the question is, if we're saying the government shouldn't borrow, where should government get money from? From my analysis earlier on, the market analysis I do every day, when I get to the commodity section, for example, I'm always very disturbed and depressed because I do know that Nigeria has comparative advantage, especially in commodities such as cassava, but we're still importing starch, cocoa, we will export cocoa, we will import chocolates and all of that. Nigeria is the biggest market for champagne, for example. What more can we do? Is there an innovative way whereby we can expand our revenue base without really taxing perhaps the informal sector, like you said, without really, the average Nigerian bearing the brunt? I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
I do. So you've mentioned the comparative advantage in the agriculture chain. I believe contribution to GDP, agriculture is second place behind services. So there's a lot that can be done there. But the thing is, think about the value chain of the agriculture space. Think about the lack of power or storage facilities. Look at how much we waste that gets spoiled in tomatoes every year. Think about the infrastructure, the roads that you have to use to the cocoa you've mentioned and other things, transport them from the farm over to the markets where they are sold. So if you don't want to start taxing people, you're going to have to make sure that you juice up, excuse the pun since we're talking about fruits and so on, but you have to make sure that you juice up the agricultural chain. Power has to be there for storage facilities to store produce. Roads have to be better, to work better in order to transport them quickly before they spoil. And then also you probably have to, use mechanized farming. We don't have that. Mechanized farming is going to increase our yield per hectare, allowing us to export more. So if to use your agriculture example, those things have to be in place in order to increase production, which can increase exports, which can now bring in more revenue for the country if you want to avoid borrowing.
Now let's go to another issue, which is the capital importation. Capital importation data was released last week, I think, by the National Bureau of Statistics. When I also saw that data, I wasn't too happy. About $200 million FDI investment. it's even FDI into the country for a country of about 200 million people. I hope you saw that data. What came to your mind?
I'm with you. Just as disappointed. This is a $500 billion economy, the giant of Africa, and in a 3-month period, you are bringing in less money than what I think Dangote earns in the same period. So, it's pretty sad. And FDI, I'm glad you focused on that. That is the critical mode of capital importation that the country needs, because it's a job creator, right? This is money that is actually going to be sunk into the country and will stay here, as opposed to portfolio investments, which are what they call, quote unquote, hot money. They just come in for returns and then they jump out. So it's a very disappointing figure. I believe FDI, capital importation for FDI has been falling for the past 4 quarters now in a row. So investment is soft because investors they're not seeing any incentives to come into the market and park their money here. Look at the example of the refineries. For years, Nancy, we've been talking about fixing the refineries. The refineries are going to cost, I think they said about $2 billion or so. But if you, Nancy, have money to invest in Nigeria's refineries so that we can refine our own fuel and not have to spend so much to bring it in from overseas, what is your own return? If you're capping prices, again, I'm sorry I'm going back to the subsidy, but if you are capping a price on refineries, or rather, on PMS at 145, and you're asking an investor to sink $2 billion into Nigeria, they're not going to get the returns that they need when you are capping prices. So it's examples like that that deter investors from coming in. Also, there really is no policy direction as to what is going to incentivize investors to come into the country. And that's the reason why you're seeing it in numbers. To quote Jay-Z, he said, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. So the numbers are telling the story that investors are not incentivized, as far as FDI is concerned, to come in here on a permanent basis.
In fact, there was a place I saw, in God we trust, or in God you can trust, but every other person should trust data. I can't remember where I saw that. And the data, just like I said earlier, when I saw it last week, it was, very disturbing. That means Nigeria is not an attractive place to do business right now. And I know the government needs money to do a whole lot of things. The government also needs to open up the space so that private investors or investors can really come in. In fact, when I saw all of this, I also asked myself, are government policies right? Or are government policies right, but it will take time to yield fruit? Or perhaps the government doesn't even know what it's doing and is just going around in circles? Or the EAC, the Economic Advisory Council, where are they in all of this? Odidiri, I've said 4 things. I hope you understand my analysis right now.
We are in tune. The Economic Advisory Council was very, very promising. They look very promising. I mean, you've got Mr. Doing Salami, you've got Mr. Bismarck Rewane, you've got some really, these are purebred economists that we're expecting to advise the government as to what to do when it comes to, in bringing investments. Here's a perfect example as to the disappointment. On the number of trips that the president took, he went to China, he went to Russia, he went to Saudi Arabia. He didn't take anybody from the Economic Advisory Council. I mean, these are the people that you're supposed to take with you to go talk to foreign investors and convince them to come in. Instead, he was going with governors. For each of his foreign trips, he's going with governors. Now, I understand that governors are the CEOs of their respective states, and they have a hand in talking to investors. But if you want to take your best hands with you when you're going on these foreign trips to bring investments into the country. The Tokyo trip, I think it was just a Tokyo Africa investment trip that he went on. Ghana ended up coming out and getting an agreement, I believe, with Toyota to open up a plant there. We still haven't gotten to anything to that level. So I'm with you. Yes, we haven't heard from the Economic Advisory Council, and we should, because we need to give solid advice given to the government in order to bring much needed investment into the country.
Mr. Odidiri, I think we'll continue some other time. Let's just halt our brakes at this point. Let's hope that the relevant authorities are listening to us and make perhaps some needed changes. If they're on the right path, so be it. Let them continue to do the right thing. But if they are not, they should reverse and begin to do the right thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Odidiri. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to discussing with you again. Thank you. All right. I've been speaking with Aruoture Odidiri, the editor of Business